All right, good evening, everybody. I'm going to call to order the June 26, 2024 Planning Board meeting. If we could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So, we will get right into administrative board work. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of June 5th.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Motion, do I have a second?
What are we doing for voting?
We get 6 regular
yeah.
members and one of our ex officios, so we got 7 voting members. There is a quorum. And the chair can also
Good to go.
proceed.
Fantastic. That's why I've got this guy. He helps out, you know.
Got to tabulate everything.
I'll second that. Want to make sure the public.
Thank you. I have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any
I'm abstaining.
abstentions?
Yeah.
As well.
You too? Okay, perfect. All right. And I am looking for a motion to approve the minutes of June 12th, 2024.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we accept the minutes of June 12th, 2024 as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes in the affirmative, and you're an abstention, correct?
I'm an abstention. I thought we were just doing the 12th. That's
Oh.
the one I missed. So
All right. So there we go. Fantastic.
I'll start listening now.
That's all right. It's a Wednesday. All right. Regional impact determinations. Kelly, we don't have any?
None this evening, Mr. Chair.
Fantastic. And discussions with town staff.
I'm all set.
You have one extension request this evening for the Vista East and West site plan. We're
So-
requesting extension to September 25th.
So I am looking for a motion to grant an extension request to September 25th, 2024 for the Vista East and West medical site plans.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we extend the date for Vista Ridge, it's lost it here,
September 25th.
to September 25th, 2024.
A motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Jason. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes in the affirmative. And the extension request has been granted. All right, Kelly, I have a brief update on the master plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the board's request, we did post for the 2 at-large membership vacancies on the subcommittee for the master plan. We received 7 applications. Today was the deadline. And so the intention is to hold those interviews on July 10th, as long as the board is still okay with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can, is everybody all right with July 10th for our interviews? Fantastic. I would say we'll get the applications out to everybody, and if we could all, would everybody be open to picking 2 that they'd like to interview, and we'll go from there.
I think you might consider interviewing everybody.
Yeah? All 7? All right, I like it.
Yes, I
Let's
think
do
it's
it.
best to listen to everyone, see what they have to offer.
What else do we have on the meeting for July the 10th?
Waste management.
We have waste management and we have 2 new applications, a rezoning and a lot line adjustment.
Okay, so,
And it is also a master plan work session.
yes. Fantastic. So, yeah, we'll do those first then. Let's go right off the bat with the
Okay.
interviews on the 10th.
And then the last item
I
related to
just
the
have
master
a
plan.
question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
So, how about boards and committees? Do we have a full complement there?
I believe so. I may be waiting to hear back from the Heritage Commission, but I believe we're all set.
No, I think we're good. Heritage sent us something, didn't they?
You're probably right. I
Yeah.
don't recall off the top of my head.
I believe we're all set from a board and committee standpoint. I believe we're good to go. We do have to finalize ours. I know we kind of very briefly talked about it. But there were no formal motions and whatnot, so we can do that on the 10th as well.
And just lastly, I sent the draft survey to all of the department heads and then the leadership of the leaders of boards and committees, just to review and provide initial feedback before we send it out to the public. So that's underway as well.
Fantastic. So we'll be seeing that in the next couple days then. Great. Awesome. Anything from the board?
Yeah, so, thank you, Mr. Chair. So you remember at our last meeting, this board made a motion and unanimously voted to send to the town council a suggestion that they look at Gilchrist Road for traffic. They listened for 8 seconds, and a second after that referred it back to us for more specifics. So I'd like to try and do that tonight, if it's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for discussion, I would like to make a motion that this board recommends to the town council that we have a 4-way stop sign at Gilchrist, Tokenel, and Charlestown Ave. That's that 4-way intersection. And that would be my recommendation for step 1 in moving forward to help mitigate the problems at Gilchrist Road. The reason I'm doing this is because the citizens came, they spoke, they told us they were suffering, they told us they had a problem. This is one way to do it, to help the town council understand that the citizens have spoken to us. They will certainly have their own public hearings, but I think it's important for them to know that we would like to do this. I'm using as an example, and the town council will hear this from me as well, the people on Old Mammoth Road, the Village District, suffered for years. Went to town council, nothing happened. The discussion was about, the first discussion was about stop signs, then there was studies, then there was crash gates, there was tabletops, there was rotaries, and then after I don't know how many years, it came all the way around full circle
The stop sign.
to stop signs. I'm saying, what harm does it do to start with stop signs, no pun intended? If it doesn't work, then we'll go back to the drawing board and start over. So that's my motion. I would like a second for discussion so that we can talk about it as a board and then make a decision if we want to move forward or not.
Sure. Could you just, before we make a second, could you just say just your motion? And then I'll look for a second on
The
it.
motion is to have a 4-way stop sign for this board to recommend to the town council that there be a stop sign, a 4-way stop sign at Gilchrist, Charlestown Ave, and Tokenel Drive.
Perfect. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Chair, Tony is an alternate, but I'll
Oh, yeah.
gladly make the
Yeah.
motion.
Please,
Thank you.
And the same verbiage.
thank you.
Thank you. So I have a motion. I have a second. And any discussion?
I'd like to see it at Ross Drive, because we had a lot of people from Ross Drive come to our meetings and complain. That's just a street above it, I believe.
So the reason why I didn't do it at Ross Drive is because there's no natural 4-way intersection there. And the people from Ross Drive have Gale Road to get onto Tokenel.
To get
And
the stop sign.
from the people that I know that live on Ross Drive, and I know several of them, they said they're going that way anyway because there's a corner in the road at Ross Drive
Right.
that's dangerous for them to go north. And so they have been using Gale Road to go to Tokenel to go north. So that's why I didn't put it there. That and the
Well, I
fact that
said that
there's no
because they were
natural
the
4-way.
ones complaining. And that would make it easier for them to get out onto Gilchrist
I could
without
underst-
having to go through a maze of.
I could
street-
understand his placement, though. I mean, you know, if we're gonna pick one or the other, I would certainly want to pick the one where we could get all four ways to come to a stop. So I
And understand this is part 1.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be asking later on, or Art's gonna be asking later on, once the developments build out on the east and west side of Gilchrist Road, that wherever the natural 4-way is, either Boston or Albany,
I think it's all.
I think it's Albany, because it's gonna be a natural 4-way
Yeah.
streets there to have another one there. This is just step 1 to help these folks Is it perfect? No. Is it gonna work? Probably, but we really don't know. But for very little money. And if it doesn't work, then we take the stop signs down. Stop signs don't have an expiration date on them, and they can be reused forever. So
Yep.
that's where we're at.
Anything else?
So was the motion that we voted on at that meeting, was it properly delivered at the council meeting? Because just reading the minutes here, you know, Member L. Wiles made a motion to recommend to town council that they look at Gilchrist Road regarding traffic mitigation. I guess my
I
only
relayed it.
my only hesitation would be, oh, well, you did,
As did Counselor Faber.
yeah, okay. I'm just wondering why the council just was
The
just like,
council wanted, or their response, as Tony stated, was come back to the council with specifics.
So I think maybe we gave them a 30,000-foot view with that motion,
Sure.
and they're looking for a more specific one. I think is part of it.
yeah. I guess when I reviewed that, I don't think it was.
Delivered, right?
I didn't. Yeah.
Well, I think, if I may, Mr. Chair,
But
just,
if it's
it probably would be beneficial for somebody from the planning board to relay it directly to
Yeah.
the council.
okay.
I can do that. Were you at the hearing?
I had to leave.
Oh.
Something about a Celtics game.
Ah, yeah.
I
I would be more than happy to, at the next council meeting, I would be more than happy to come with you as well.
Thank you.
So I have a motion. What's up?
No, I'm just thinking.
I have a motion. I have a second.
We're gonna.
Any other conversation? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
I-
Opposed? Chair votes in the affirmative, and we have a new motion, a new, more clear motion to the council that we will follow up with them on. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, board.
Not a problem. We have no old business today, so new business. We have a public hearing on an application for formal review of a site plan for infrastructure associated with the Village on Technology Hill PUD, including roadways, water, sewer, electric, and gas utility services, zoned Industrial 1, Industrial 2, and Village on Technology Hill PUD. Londonderry Holdings LLC is the owner and applicant, map 28, lots 31-6, 29-2, and map 17, lot 2, 5-3, 5-4, and 5-5. We have to look at completeness. Staff.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, there are 3 outstanding checklist items. If the board decides to accept the application as complete, these items should be waived for acceptance only. Item number 1, the applicant has not provided utility clearance letters for telephone, cable TV, sewer, or water services per Londonderry Site Plan Regulation Checklist Item Roman numeral 11-5. Second item is applicant has not provided bridge design plans and supporting information for the checklist. Item 3, the applicant has not identified wetland impacts associated with the proposed bridge crossing for Phase 1 per the regulations. And lastly, the applicant has not provided copies of permits for NHDS site-specific, NHDS sewer discharge in the town of Londonderry sewer per this checklist.
Thank you. Nick. Nick, yeah. Walk me through these 4 completeness items and let me
I
know
would be happy to.
why they're not complete.
Understood.
in
As
the
much
application process.
as much as we harass the telephone and cable TV companies, we apparently are not high on their priority list to have a letter that states they will provide us with those utilities. We will continue to pester them until we get those. Our apologies for that omission. In regards to the sewer, a sewer application was submitted to the sewer department. It seems to be a little confusion as to something perhaps, I'm not sure what happened, but that sewer application has been submitted. The manner in which that process is now working, and John can correct me if otherwise, is they don't provide a clearance letter until they approve of the design.
Correct.
All right, so that's one it's a hard one to offer until that sewer design is complete. Water service. So I actually have a fun update for that one. it's one of the things that we've been working on. We knew there were some deficiencies in the existing system. As of today, we have agreed terms and we have copied town staff on this for a memorandum of understanding for water service for the property between Manchester Waterworks and Ken Selinsky as the applicant. There are going to be some things they have to work through. Given those pumps are deficient, we're really looking at a 3-step process. The first step being evaluating those existing pumps. We know they're deficient, but is there enough room in the existing pump house to replace them? That's what they're working on right now. Should that not come to fruition, go to step 2, make the building bigger. If the building cannot be enlarged given the constraints of the physical site, you go to step 3, which is to build a new building and to work out the resolve as to how you continue to supply water during that duration. So there's a document that will be signed shortly, but the terms of which have been agreed to relative to water service, and that's been provided to the town.
How about bridge design plans and supporting information
Certainly.
and
So
wetland impacts associated with said bridge?
I'll start with the bridge plans. We have now supplied stamped bridge plans. They had been reviewed with the town, but we hadn't provided a copy until they were stamped by the engineer of record. Admittedly, that was today, but they are now in the town's possession. We'll
Say that
coordinate.
again, Nick? No, we never saw the bridge plans before. We saw the bridge.
When we sat down,
Two-
I don't
2
want to
week-
be argumentative.
About an hour ago, we saw the bridge plans.
Okay.
Clarity. Thank you.
Relative to wetland impacts, I'm at a loss on this one relative to the reviewer's comment. The bridge is proposed for the purposes of no wetland impacts. There are no wetland impacts associated with the bridge. It completely spans the wetland. This is not a brook, a river, or stream whereby you have to also evaluate the bank associated with that water body. I'm doing my best not to be frustrated about that because that's an ill-advised comment and it's not applicable. And I apologize that that is on this. There are no wetland impacts, so I can answer that one quite clearly, sir. Relative to the last component, I think this is just a communication error perhaps between ourselves and staff. These applications have been provided, but I think they were provided in a manner in which it was not clear. The AOT application is included in our stormwater management report. The sewer discharge permit was provided originally but not updated. So that information is present. I think it's a matter of how you want to look at it, whether or not that information is available. I would say that those items are in large part complete.
Okay. Board, I'm looking for a motion one way or the other. What would we like to do?
Ask for some clarification from
Yes, sir.
the applicant just on the water situation. I got lost when you started talking about buildings and.
No problem. So relative to the existing water service, the pumps that are currently providing this vicinity, we've found to be substandard. When we ran our hydrant flow test, unbeknownst to us, the fire pump kicked on, which is why we got these great results. So going back and having the opportunity to sit with Guy Chabot and his team, we are able to walk through what the options are. So the first option is to replace the pumps in place. They're just too small. We put bigger ones in. If we are constrained relative to space within that building, you can't physically fit a pump that size, we have to evaluate whether or not that building can be expanded. It does appear as if that is a fruitful endeavor, so that's why we made sure we identified it as an option. The worst case scenario is either we can't fit the pumps in the existing building, the site constraints won't allow the building to get bigger so that we can put in the bigger pumps. We actually have to evaluate building a brand new pump station and finding a location for that. We do have options relative to the development on where that could be placed.
So where is the building today? Where is it located?
So just northwest of the subject proper, if you're familiar with that portion of Akira Way, there's that stormwater basin that's just to the northwest of where we are. There's a site driveway there and a very small building immediately adjacent. That driveway is where that water pumping station is.
And what's your outlook for having this all squared away?
Well, our professionals, as far as our water engineers, are working on it presently. As of last week, they went out there and physically evaluated the space and are currently preparing the calculations necessary, evaluating clear distances to see if the pumps that are necessary will fit. So step one should be resolved very quickly. Relative to what that answer is, if we're just replacing pumps, that's very straightforward. If we have to go to the next step, that's going to take a little bit more time. But the reality is both the Manchester Waterworks and the applicant have agreed, hey, we have a path forward. There's an expectation that this water service can be provided. It's just how do we do it?
That's where you said you had a memorandum of understanding with,
Yes.
with Manchester Waterworks, is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Do we have that in the packet?
It was received just today, so it's available in someone's email perhaps, but I don't know if they had the opportunity.
Maybe an hour or so, but
Have you had a chance to take a look at it?
no.
John, no?
So, thank you. So my understanding is, if you don't have water, you don't have COs, OCs, whichever way you want to say it. So the jeopardy's on them. If they want to build whatever the number is, $1 million project, and hope that they have water later on.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be obvious that they're gonna have water or they're gonna stop moving.
One way or the other.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
I would agree with that, Mr. D.
and then the other is we've had this so many times before. I've seen it, watched it, whatever. The telephone, cable TV, the power company. Sometimes it's
Usually
it's,
EverSource,
it's
9 times
yeah.
out of 10.
We actually got that one. We were excited. It took a
Yeah.
lot of pushing.
Yeah, I was surprised when I didn't see that one in there because
God bless
these are all chicken or the egg, which comes first, and one side says this comes first, the other side says that comes first. So, I mean, it's going to happen. I can't speak to the wetlands or not wetlands or whatever, but
Yeah, I think that's where we need clarification on, but I think if you don't have that information in hand right now, John, and haven't reviewed it, then, you know, it, stand the way it is.
The concern is, again, where you don't have the bridge plans, it's hard to compare, is there an impact to the wetlands? So, like you say, Tony, chicken and the egg.
Well, I'd respectfully
We look at what's submitted.
and I'd respectfully support that with the plans as presented do not show wetland impacts. It shows the limits of work associated with the bridge's construction. It shows abutment locations. It shows the clear span. It shows the location of the wetlands. It shows the location of sediment and erosion controls, which define our limits of work. So what I'm trying to clarify with those elements is just to state that the plans as presented do not show wetland impacts.
so having been on your side of the table before, respectfully, but that's not a design plan for a bridge.
Fair enough.
You have, for lack of a better term, a concept that probably is accurate, but you don't have the design or engineering to back up the fact that it is possible. Is that a fair statement, or and
It
it's
is,
okay?
in this case, no.
We're friends. Be frank.
No, we already have a bridge designer. That's why we were able to provide stamp plans today. The only reason we didn't have them earlier was the final design review and recommendations as far as the treatments for that bridge. So they had already provided us their CAD model. We had already overlaid that CAD design into our plan, which is currently reflected. So from the standpoint of what do these plans reflect, they reflect the design of the bridge that was submitted as of today.
Thank you. And for the record, we're not really friends. That was just
He just needed to calm me down a little bit. I get a little excited sometimes. I apologize.
what I should have said.
A
Was
passionate
no
person.
one's watching. Talk frankly. Was
Yeah.
what I probably should have
Yeah,
said.
Yeah,
So,
so. All
And
right.
when was that submitted? You said was submitted
The bridge design plans?
Yeah.
Yes, they were submitted only today, though.
today. So if John and Kelly haven't gotten a chance to review them.
Nope. I believe, I know I'm not qualified to review bridge design plans. I'm assuming that'll be a third party that ultimately goes to.
Correct.
All right. Board, how would we like to proceed on this? I'm looking for a motion.
So can I ask another question?
Lynn, you can ask away, sir.
So if we don't accept it tonight, and I have all confidence that we'll accept it at the next meeting, because I think all these items will be addressed at the next meeting, what does that do to the applicant? I mean, we're gonna still review plans tonight and talk about water.
You need to
You're gonna have
waive these for
completeness.
acceptance only
Yeah. This is
in order for them to be heard and go through
correct.
whatever
There's
their
so
Oh, okay.
we still, like any checklist items, we would be waiving them for acceptance purposes only. That would allow them to be heard tonight.
Yep.
So we can get through some of the discussion here. Those would then become a condition of approval, these items that we would be waiving.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion.
Mr. Rod.
that the board will accept the application as complete. These items are waived for acceptance only. And there's the 4 items that are listed on the memo from staff of June 26, 2024. The applicant has not provided utility clearance letters for telephone, CATV, sewer, or water service per Londonderry Site Plan Regulations, checklist item X 1.5. Applicant has not provided bridge design plans and supporting information per Londonderry Site Plan checklist item 11 point, or that's Roman numeral 2.7 and Roman numeral 7.J. Applicant has not identified wetland impacts associated with the proposed bridge crossing for phase 1 per Londonderry Site Plan Regulations checklist item 6.1.0.2. And the applicant has not provided copies for permits from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, site-specific New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, sewer discharge and town of Londonderry sewer per Londonderry Site Plan Regulations checklist item 7.1.
We have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second from Lynn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes in the affirmative. We have accepted this for, your application is considered complete for acceptance purposes only, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Not a problem.
For the record, my name is Dick Anagnost, co-developer, and I'd like to identify the other parties with us tonight who may be called upon to provide information to the board. You've already heard from Nick Golan from TF Moran. We have with us Ken and Grace Solinsky, who are the prime developers of the site. We have Bruce Blazon from Principal of North Branch Construction, who may be called upon to talk about the construction of the infrastructure. We have Kevin Smith, our development consultant. And lastly but not least, we have Scott DeLome from Stone River Architects, although you won't be seeing any architecturals tonight because we're only dealing with infrastructure, which leads me to a point where I'd like to take a step backward and come back to a 10,000-foot view of the project for a second. When we first started this project and first came before the board, we essentially took the approach of how do you eat an elephant? And it's one piece at a time. And we met with staff multiple times. And before this board, we've presented twice now that we'll be coming with you with various small bites of the project. So there were 7 steps that we laid out. The first one has been complete, which was the PUD approval. And now we're into step 2, which is infrastructure. So you're not going to see any buildings tonight. You're not going to see anything but roadways, drainage, and related infrastructure items. We are not prepared to discuss traffic. I know that we received comments today from a third-party consultant for the town that included traffic. We had agreed and presented and discussed earlier with the board the traffic would be discussed with the buildings, particularly coming up, which would be the next package, which is the residential piece that would be before you. This was both for review purposes, staff time, the board's time, and our ability to produce essentially all of the information necessary to create the elephant. So tonight will be before you just for infrastructure purposes, and a lot of it's technical in nature. So being the last person that understands technical things, I'll turn it over to Nick.
Thank you very much, Dick. All right, you let off with one of the primary elements, that being traffic. That it's not ready for prime time. It's not ready for tonight. Although I did want to note in reading through the comments, I was excited to read the first 3 pages, which essentially read Stantec agreed with the assumptions and conclusions in our report. So that was exciting. Acknowledging the next 3 pages, not as exciting, but they're all things that we feel that we can address, and we look forward to the opportunity to do so. I touched on it in the opening as we addressed the completeness criteria. One of the big items we needed to make assurance of was water service, so I don't think I need to reiterate that component, but that is working towards an appropriate resolution. One of the elements that perhaps we weren't thinking about initially, but was brought to our attention in this forum, as well as with the Conservation Commission and Fish and Game, was this evaluation of wildlife passages. It's not something we would necessarily think of when we're thinking about infrastructure, but it's really turned into one of the most important elements for this site overall, is making sure that we are able to provide these appropriate passageways. So through coordination with Fish and Game, Patrick Fitzgibbons, who's a wildlife biologist, we were able to determine the construct of what we needed to provide. There will be turtle crossing signs. We have, because we're in the memorandum of understanding for New England Cottontail that the town of Londonderry has with Fish and Game, we have a determination of the value of the check that needs to be provided to offset those impacts. And it also provides Fish and Game the opportunity to come out, trap any of those species, and be able to relocate them to other locations. We have the wildlife seed mix that we're using along the perimeters of our property to provide appropriate transitions from the built environment to the natural environment. It's a great aspect for our pollinators, our bees, our other small wildlife. We're incorporating the Green Snow Pro certification, although I note in the comment letter that may have been an item missing from our operation and maintenance manual for our stormwater. Specific to the wildlife passages, I wanted to share this because this was something that I learned that was new. When you're looking at the distance across those culverts, it's how far can the turtle see? That is an actual criteria. There's math to it where we can evaluate to make sure there are appropriate sight lines for turtles so that they can pass through these wildlife passages. So through the coordination and efforts of Fish and Game, they've given us the guidance that we need. So essentially we'll be installing grates at the center line of our roadways, at the center span of these culverts to make sure our turtles can see far enough so that they feel comfortable using them. Those wildlife passages are included at appropriate locations where otherwise wetland areas would be bisected and essentially left so that wildlife wouldn't be able to enter in and out of them. So this is essentially a 3-foot culvert with a 1-foot naturalized bottom, the materials of which are as prescribed by Fish and Game. So that's going to provide us that opportunity for passage for our New England cottontails, our amphibians, our reptiles, to make sure that all those species of concern can be addressed. So I wanted to share that update. I thought that was important. We had the opportunity to share it with Conservation Commission last night, and also that we're going to continue to work with them to try and reduce our setback impacts to wetlands wherever possible. Specific to the infrastructure, which we're reviewing tonight, it's a fairly small number. For the project as a whole, we have about 500,000 square foot of wetland setback that are incorporated on the property. We made mention of the 245,000 square feet of wetlands that we have, noting that we were only impacting 950, which is a nice 0.4%. We didn't do quite as good on the wetland setbacks. It's approximately 13% that we're impacting for the project as a whole. But really the reality is a third of that impact is in the bridge crossing of itself. That's because you have wetland buffers on both sides.
Yes, sir. Sorry, Nick.
Yes, sir.
Could you, for the TV audience, you just mentioned a huge number, and then you used a relatively almost technical term of setback.
Yes, sir.
Could you describe the fact of what the setback means? You're not disturbing anything, you're not,
Understood.
please
I'd be happy to.
tell everybody what a setback is.
So
Thank you.
part of the Londonderry regulations, as far as your zoning ordinance, prescribes a 50-foot wetland setback, and it really limits an applicant's ability to do work within those areas. No structures, no pavement, and if there is a desire to impact that area, it requires a conditional use permit. So one of the things that we discussed with this board as well as Conservation Commission previously is this project is really looking at this differently. And in lieu of trying to enhance these wetland setbacks, we're avoiding impacts to wetlands in their entirety. We have our 950 square feet. So that setback area is a 50-foot distance measured horizontally from the edge of wetlands. It was our goal to have as little impact to that area as possible. As mentioned, it's about 66,000 square feet, so that accounts to about 13% of the total wetland setback. The idea and the purpose of that wetland setback is to preserve the functional characteristics of the wetland. It helps stormwater filter out, so that if you have impervious areas that are draining across and into that wetland area, it gives Mother Nature the opportunity to provide a little bit of treatment. One of the highlights of what we were able to share with the Conservation Commission last night is outside of our bridge crossing, the two other largest areas where we are incurring impact into that wetland setback is to provide stormwater management features. And it's the back slope of those stormwater management areas. So that's going to have a wildlife seed mix on it, which is very much going to replicate what we would otherwise had as part of that wetland setback. Everyone seemed that was an acceptable answer. but we're going to continue to work with them as prescribed in our PUD to limit those impacts. And whenever we have changes that impact the environment or other things that would be of interest to them, we go back to give them the update, solicit their advice, and look to incorporate those elements.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. And as Dick mentions aptly, there's no buildings in those setbacks. We have one retaining wall, which is about 12 feet from a wetland. They wanted to know the distances that we were coming, because as the PUD is written, we can get within 5 feet. We have some grading that gets as close as 3 feet, but that is on the basis of our centralized access roads, and again, it's downslope of a stormwater management area. Those stormwater management areas do not directly discharge to that. We're relying on those to infiltrate into the ground so that they can recharge those wetlands. So it's a nice symbiotic relationship as far as how that's provided. All right, so that's my take on the environmental. I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to talk a little bit about the wildlife passage element. Our expectation is part of a resubmittal to Fish and Game forthcoming that we'll be able to have their blessing in regards to those environmental impacts, which will allow the wetlands permit to be approved, and then subsequently our alteration of terrain permit to also be approved. Looking to our comment letter. So if we remove the traffic elements and a little bit of the forward, it's still a fair amount there, about 10 pages worth of comments. The last 3 or 4 pages are specifically addressing our stormwater management report. Reading through those elements, I would say they are very fine-tuned comments and questions. A good example of that would be a time of concentration. So if folks aren't familiar with what a time of concentration is, it's really just the hydrologic distance in which stormwater would travel. So from point A to point B, drop of water hits here, how long is it going to take to get to your receiving point? There were a couple of areas where they were concerned that we hadn't identified the appropriate land cover, and evaluating what our response would be to those comments, it doesn't fundamentally change any element of our design or the output of our models. But could it be fine-tuned? Yes. So I look at these comments and I would say the vast majority, 50 if not 60% of them, are fine-tuning comments that will provide a more accurate model, which is what we always strive for, but they do not functionally impact or change the nature of our designs. There were a couple of comments in there that I thought I would just bring to light that weren't specific necessarily to dot the I and cross the T. There was one comment, and just really in relationship to our downstream stormwater management area. The vast majority of this site drains east to west. So we have recreated that to make sure the site also drains east to west. It's also the low point of the site. Makes sense. Stormwater flows downhill. They raised a concern that the stormwater management areas be adequate relative to the amount of infiltration. I think it's just a clarification for them that the data is there when we're looking at not increasing the volume of runoff to an abutter. That's going to be infiltrated to the ground, where these are in some fill sections. They had some concerns with overturning moments or otherwise, and I'm getting into some technical stuff here. But these are all solvable problems. And in more cases than not, these are really just clarifications on design intent. You'll notice speckled throughout this the words, what was it? It appears, or we assume. Those are easy questions to answer. In some cases, they answered their own question. It appears the following. We assume this. And the answer is yes, that was the case. So I don't have concerns or trepidations with answering these questions. I think there's a couple of spots where there's just some clarification between what the PUD requires versus what the site plan or subdivision regulations require as well, which is typical. It's like starting over with a new zoning ordinance, so we would expect there to be a couple of areas where clarifications need to be made. But given that we're not talking about uses tonight, we're not talking about the residential buildings or the child care or the retail, we're just talking about utilities and utility crossings. They note in a few locations where we need to clarify some crossings. It's a big sheet set, 90 some odd sheets. So information is located on some sheets, but not all sheets. And they do aptly point out in some locations that, well, we would prefer to see it on this sheet also. We can add that information. And honestly, I don't have a long presentation for you folks tonight. The reality is I look at these comments, I find them to be readily addressable, and that the vast majority of it is fine-tuning. And that's what makes the best design. So appreciative of the comments in most respects to make sure that we fine-tune these items. But when I look at the length of the comments in comparison to the concerns, I don't have concerns that these can be readily addressed, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we'll start with staff. John, Kelly?
Yep. Again, I'm not gonna belabor it and go through all the comments. I disagree with some of Nick's comments, but we're not gonna go tit for tat. We've already had a discussion this afternoon. Personally, I think the plan set is incomplete, should not be conditionally approved this evening. There's a lot of missing items in the plan set. It's not just, we prefer to see it this way. It's our regulations. It's engineering standards. Nobody else looked at these set of plans. We still have concerns regarding sewer capacity on Akira Way, where most of the sanitary waste is going down Akira Way. We don't have the analysis provided to us. An example, and they have a pump station on this site. It identifies 28 residential units to tie into it. The number of 28 rang a bell in my mind, and I look at this stuff, I live and breathe it all the time, and the flow rate of 13,000 gallons. Well, that's the pump station that they designed for Catesby Lane off at Gilchrist Road. So it's just sloppy, my opinion. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Kelly?
I think John's covered it, but just as procedurally, for this evening, you've waived the checklist items for acceptance only. Those become conditions of approval. You have an additional waiver request before you as well as the site plan application itself. So you'll need to make a decision on the waiver and then the plan itself.
Thank you. Board, do we have any input here?
I do have a question.
Absolutely, sir.
I'm not sure if tonight's the right time to ask about regarding stormwater management. How does stormwater management measured today, stormwater runoff measured today up there? Is
So
it just purely calculation, or is there any way to actually measure flow?
Purely calculation.
And do you know what numbers go into that calculation? Is it a 100-year storm or anything like that?
So we look at the 25-year storm and the 50-year storm. I believe AOT looks at, 210, 25, 50, and actually 100.
Because I just have a general concern long-term about the new impermeable surfaces being added up on top of the hill and what that's going to do for stormwater management. And I can see down the road where we're going to have some discussions on whether or not the development increased that flow or not. And I would just like to make sure we have a good baseline going into it.
Right. So again, as Nick, and that's how we analyze it. We look at pre-development. So right now, it's 100 acres of forested area.
Exactly.
Runoff coefficient of
Yep.
0.25. So again, Q equals CIA. Q is the flow. C is the coefficient of runoff. I is the intensity. And A is the area. It goes from a
agree.
C of 0.25 to a C of 0.9 because there's so much impervious out there.
Yep.
So that delta is what's going to be stored in that pond. And again, in this case, they're proposing to infiltrate into it. And that is one of the concerns. Nick is absolutely right. It flows east to west.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you're still going to have that additional impact to those down gradient people.
Yep.
And you're absolutely right, Lynn. They're at the top of a hill.
Yep, and I'm just a little, I'm not going to stop anything from going forward, but I'm just a little concerned where we're talking about calculations for stormwater runoff up there. And we assume it goes east to west, but we don't know, and that 50-year storm, we have a 100-year storm come up, what happens? What do we have to plan for?
I can answer a little bit of that for you, Lynn.
Sure.
So, although it is calculation-based, we go out and field measure those soils.
I'm sorry.
So we actually go out and field measure those
Okay.
soils for their infiltrative capacities. So it's a requirement for the alteration of terrain for every 2,500 square feet. You have a minimum of 2 test pits and also infiltration testing. So we physically go out there and measure the receiving capacity of those soils. So it's not based off of KSAT values, which are the conductivity rates that you can find in a manual. We physically go out there and measure it, and then we cut that number in half as a factor of safety. They determined that was, they being alteration of terrain and the UNH Stormwater Center, that's an appropriate safeguard for the public. So that's what we follow. In a lot of instances, our stormwater management features are going to be located in fill. We have the opportunity to prescribe what type of fill is used, which will be well-draining soils. Even though we are using fill, we are still evaluating the soils that are below them for the purposes of our infiltrative capacity. It's the worst case scenario and what we like to use as our design basis. So although it's theoretical from a pre-post development standpoint, when we look at the design of our stormwater management practices, it is physical that we evaluate those elements.
Great, thank you for the explanation.
Yes, sir.
Mr. D.
For staff, please.
Yes.
So, John and Kelly, in any of these projects, once they're built out, do we have and let's continue with stormwater runoff. As I understand it, the regs are you can't, one project can't put water on another project, or across a road or whatever. Do we have a mechanism in place to retroactively, if we find out that a project, something happened, the measurements were wrong, someone missed something somewhere, and water is flooding someone's house next door? Do we have a mechanism in place to make the person whose land is causing, because they changed the land, to fix it so that the water doesn't go over there, because it wasn't supposed to in the first place?
We don't.
Well, I guess my response to that would be, I think it's a case-by-case basis, first of all. And I think that if someone has brought to the town's attention that they believe there's an increase in runoff onto their personal property, again, it depends on the situation, but I would think that they would need to provide some a level of burden of proof to prove that it is in fact being caused by that abutting property or whatever the case may be.
So at that point, is it civil between the two parties, or is it the town that forces the change to the
Again, I think
offending
it
party?
really depends on the case before it being presented, but it may, in my experience in other towns, for example, it's become a civil matter.
Thank you.
But I can't say specifically, it depends.
Yeah, understood, yeah, thank you.
It was a couple of years ago, we had an instance where a subdivision had gone in, and then one of the abutting properties had excessive water flowing through. And really, it was John, as the prime negotiator between the developer and also the individual landowner.
In that
They
instance,
reached resolution on it. There's nothing saying that we have to do this or anything, but I think it's the town's effort and John's effort going out to try to get a resolution, and a resolution was achieved. So.
in that instance was where the water flowed when it left that site.
Yeah.
That's what the unknown was. That was-
And just to add another point, that is why we go through this process, and that is why we, the town, have the requirement that a professional engineer stamp the drainage and stormwater plans. There's a level of liability there that we ensure is covered, essentially.
Thank you. All set.
Mr. Chair, could I add something? I was just,
Give me a minute.
yes, sir.
11H in the comments, it mentions verify with the Londonderry Fire Department that the location of the fire hydrants is acceptable. Has that been done?
Yes. We are by code.
Thank you. What were you going to say, sir?
Oh, I was just going to offer, relative to the stormwater practices, town has a stormwater permit, requires mandatory inspections. The alteration of terrain permit, which is the state permit for the similar features, has mandatory inspections. So if there is an enforceable action, as in the individuals are not maintaining their stormwaters, they can be found in non-compliance with their permit. So there is an enforcement action that is available to folks, not always with a residential element, because it has to deal with what permits were approved. But I've seen it on projects in the past where alteration of terrain has the ability to say, no, you're not maintaining your stormwater, you're in violation, get up to speed.
Yep. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anything else from the board?
It's just
Yes,
Well,
slightly.
I think to that whole point too, just to relax people's minds around the topic too, we also bond these projects. So in order for them to get their bond back, they have to build to satisfactory
To
code.
satisfy,
Yeah.
The bond, John, is only for restoration. That's all the bond does.
I think you've held it up in the past for like the runoff issue that we were just discussing in Sherwood.
Never have.
Okay.
But could I add just one more, just to reiterate our regulations and our requirements? So after this board conditionally approves a project, including the drainage and stormwater, there's a whole inspection process that we go through after. So it's not as if these are conditions of approval and we have a giant, 200-page drainage plan and we say, we're done. There's an inspection process to ensure that those things are built according to the approval and according to
Right.
regulation.
Thank you.
Sherwood, John, was a public road. That's the difference.
This isn't a public road?
No, it is not.
They are private facilities.
Anything else from the board? All right, seeing none, this is a public comment, a public hearing, excuse me, so I'm gonna open up public comment. If you have anything you have to say, please come up and state your name and address, and the floor is yours.
Ray Breslin, 3 Gary Drive.
All right.
I'd just like to say that this is an extremely big project that is going to have considerable impact on the town in various ways. We haven't talked about traffic here, but that will be something to discuss. In particular, we're talking about a number of residential buildings, I believe in the neighborhood of 4 stories high, that personally I would be concerned with fire protection, how much water is there, whether there's sufficient pumps there to get the water up there, let alone to get the fire trucks up there in an emergency. There was discussion about stormwater runoff. We have responsibility here in town about stormwater runoff, MS4, which, and by the way, what's the road that goes around the airport?
Perimeter?
Perimeter Road, yes, Perimeter Road. And in the past year or so, or 2 years, we put in a bridge, or rather a culvert, underneath there. And in the springtime, there's a torrent of water coming down off this hill that actually did some erosion that had to be dealt with. And so all of this is of concern to the town, and certainly the developer has the right to present what he's going to present, and if it meets proper criteria, I guess it can move forward. But there's certainly a lot to look at here, a lot of concerns, what the impact is going to be on the fire department, police department, DPW, water, sewer, and stormwater runoff. And so these are decisions that you folks have to make. And I hope all of this is taken into account so that we end up with something that's going to be reasonable. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ray. Anyone else from the public?
Good evening, Brian Johnson, Londonderry Fire Department. To answer your question, I have seen multiple hydrant plans. Not one of them meets our regulations as of yet. So they have resubmitted, but none of them have passed. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Apologize, Mr. Chair. That was not my understanding at all. I will check in with Brian immediately after the meeting.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, anybody else from the public? Yes, sir, come on up.
Hello, all.
How are you?
Good. My name is Bruce Blaze, and I'm the principal of the construction management firm. I do want to just say a couple of things about the stormwater management of the site. Nick's design will be followed explicitly. North Branch has a long history with the oldest contractor in the state of New Hampshire. We've done many projects in the town of Londonderry, including working with John on town property. North Branch is unique in the fact that we actually have stormwater inspectors on site, and we will assign 2 to this project for daily inspections. We'll hire a third-party consultant. We'll have weekly inspections that'll generate report. We're all about following the process and procedures. I just wanted to let the board know that we're fully committed to that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Anyone else from the public?
Ken Zielinski, principal, owner, I don't know, owner, 50% owner, the other 50% is sitting over there. We have tried from day one to design an attractive development that'll be an asset to this town. I think we've tried to meet every desire that we've heard expressed by the board. And we appreciate the board. We appreciate the fact that we're having this meeting tonight that was called for the purpose of reviewing the infrastructure. You know, at the last meeting we had, we were asked if we could put in critter crossings. We're putting in critter crossings as Nick said, we're putting in critter crossings with skylights, which I had not heard of before, and the right material at the bottom of the culvert to accommodate them. We were asked if we could do something to recognize the original owners of this property who ended up contributing the property to the Department of War, I guess it was at the time, or the Department of the Army, so that they could provide for the Army residential areas, barracks for the Army airfield. And we're going to be doing that. We've always planned on having a museum for night vision equipment, and we're planning to add a panel, to address the historic background of this property and all that sort of thing. We are not looking to skirt or shirk or any way not fully comply with what's intended to comply with and make sure this is a sound property. My wife and I have been major taxpayers to this town going back to 1994, early 1994. We've paid our taxes on time, and we've paid lots of taxes. We've been good stewards of the properties we've owned and the properties we've built, including the pump house that we talked about earlier that pumped water up to what at the time was Insight Technology. We're familiar with that building. It's a cinder block building. If larger pumps will not fit in that building, we can bump out one wall and put larger pumps in there. We can dot the I's and cross the T's. What I find incredibly frustrating and frankly aggravating is not you people here, but it's the fact that we got these comments today, in the middle of the day, knowing that we've got this meeting with you tonight. If we had gotten them in a reasonable time prior to this meeting, we could be addressing them. Why did we get them today, in the middle of the day, when it's been known we've got this meeting? Why is it that we submitted infrastructure originally in January, and we didn't get comments until May? And we responded to those comments, and now we're getting comments now. And these comments not only address, it's not simply a response to what we submitted earlier in June. There's comments in there that relate to what was originally submitted in January. I don't understand. I would think that the goal is to be working together to do
projects in this town that are desirable and working together, getting comments in the middle of the day, 10 pages of comments, including we assume and we think. Well, why didn't you pick up the phone and ask? All they had to do is pick up the phone sometime since January and say, is this assumption correct? Or please clarify. Or you've got this note on this page, we'd like it on this other page. We could do that. In addition to the infrastructure, which was submitted originally in January, we've got residential that was submitted in February, and we still haven't gotten comments on those. We've got material in on retail and on the retail space and the childcare that was submitted in March. We haven't gotten responses on that. And we've got the traffic, which was also submitted in March, and we just got those comments today. I don't understand. I remember having a meeting early on, and I only do this sort of thing once every 10, 20 years. I'm not a developer. I'm not a developer. My companies develop products and produce products. But I remember early on having a meeting with the town, and there was concern about the ability to be able to respond to these kind of documents in a timely manner. And we were assured that the contractor that the town was going to be using had the bandwidth to be able to respond in a timely fashion. This is not a timely fashion. You've had these things for 6 months and 3 months, and we're getting 2 responses today, roughly 4 business hours before this meeting. I don't understand what's going on. And as somebody who's concerned about the taxes and that go on in this town, I will submit to you that we're going to be paying over $2 million a year in taxes, which means that every month this is delayed, the town loses $200,000. I just don't understand what's going on.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else from the public? Seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board. Board, do we have any discussion here?
So, just for the record, I'd like to say that, I don't know about anybody else, I did not get this packet until this afternoon either. But more importantly, I'd like to help the general public understand that this board doesn't build things. This board doesn't make and isn't allowed to make arbitrary decisions. This board tries to enforce and make sure that a developer builds something to the standards and the rules and the regulations of the town. And that's really the mission of this land use board, which in Londonderry is called a planning board. We are restricted severely by state law and state rules and regulations and town rules and regulations that are on the books. Thirdly, I like to say that there is a process that this town uses and has used for years to help the departments keep track of things. So it has to be like a computer program, A, B, C, D, E. If you go A, F, G, Q, C, that's when things go wrong. That's when things go haywire. That's when things get missed. If the process is followed, you have a better chance of not having things missed. I will say that the speed at which things are done here, based on my experience, are a tad bit slower than other towns that I personally worked with when I was on the other side of the table. I don't know who got what, when, how, where, for how long, third-party engineers, whatever. What I know is what we get and when we get it. And I spent this afternoon pouring through it because I had the time today to do it. There might be a time when I don't have the time to do it, when it comes in late like that. It's really not our position to do the tit for tat, John's words. Who submitted what when, who got what when, who responded to what when. All we can respond to is what we have in front of us. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Well put, Tony.
Anything else from Dan?
I just wonder if we can hear any responses from staff. Anything more they'd like to say?
Sure, so you're absolutely right. The comments for this evening were sent I think at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock this morning. That's correct. I think what we need to keep in mind is that the PUD master plan, the regulatory document that we needed to have in place, meaning approved, was approved on May 9th. So, a month and a half ago. In order to conduct the subsequent reviews, the subsequent site plans associated with the PUD, we needed that regulatory document to be approved. So even though we may have been in possession of plans for our infrastructure residential, we couldn't fully conduct a thorough review until that piece was done, step A. So that's in part the delay, if you will. With respect to receiving comments today for tonight's hearing, this is a conversation that we've had with this board many times. I was just asking John, when did we get comments with respect to the submission for tonight's meeting from third party? We got them June 24th, correct?
Yep.
It's June 26th. 11 pages of comments. That's how long it takes for John and I to sit and go through them and make sure that we're okay with those comments. Is there a solution to that problem? Probably, but we haven't found it yet. It's all related to submission deadlines, legal deadlines, and so on. Is that the applicant's fault? No, it's not. Is it our fault? Not necessarily. It's just the process that we currently have. Trust me, I want it to be different, but it's not as simple as, yep, I can make that change overnight. It requires some significant thought and potentially a change to our regulations, quite honestly, in terms of how our review process is conducted and when things are submitted.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? You said you got the reviews back on May 24th or June 24th? Which one was it?
June 24.
So you got it back from where? Your third party?
Correct.
So are they too backed up? Do they have too much work?
No, that's consistent with the time frame in which something's submitted. You're scheduled on hearing on this date. That review time takes place, and we make sure we have the comments for that, for the hearing.
I mean,
for
because
tonight.
with all due respect, we hear this a lot from the developers that come in, so. Not pointing any fingers at anybody, but, I mean, if our third-party review company has got too much business, we really should we have the option to use another third-party review company, but we're always pointing back to the same one.
Right, but the time frames in which that review occurs are the same for no matter who you use, and that's based on our regulations. So that's my point, and something more significant has to change in that regard.
Jeff?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I don't think we're gonna solve the process items right now. I think what we have in front of us is something we need to act on.
Yep, I agree. Does the board have any other questions? Ann?
Hi, I don't have a question, but I have a statement to make. Twice this week, I went down to Town Hall to look at the plans. I couldn't because John was working on them. He was trying to get, things solved himself, with solutions. But I know he was working hard the last 2 days. And, if that's what he has to do, to run through all the comments made by a third-party reviewer. I'm glad he takes the time. He needs the time. If you need more time, then I want to make sure you get the time you need to go through the plans.
Everybody always says they're the third-party review comments. They're not the third-party review comments. They are the town's comments, period.
Okay.
We vet every comment that is in this package, period. It's not the third-party reviewer.
Okay. I apologize for using that.
No, it's all right.
I think just,
I just want it clear for everybody. When they say the third party, it's not Stantec or Hoyle Tanner. It's the town's comments.
okay.
And that's why I'm specifically made the point that John and I have to sit down and go through it, because they are ultimately the town's comments. That's an important part of the review process.
When you get 75 comments and they're repeat comments because they didn't address the comment. That's what it is.
Thank you. Lynn, you looked like you wanted to say something before we start moving on here.
I think we move on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, so we have a waiver we need to act on, and then we need a motion on this application. So, the applicant has requested a waiver from LSPR 4.12.C.19.5678, requiring indication of trees greater than 15 inches in diameter and species on the existing conditions plan. How would the board like to move on that? I'm looking for a motion.
Okay, what is the reason for this?
Anybody?
Yeah,
The regulation or the waiver?
The waiver.
The,
We understand the
okay.
regulation. Why are you looking for?
It's a
relief?
110 acre parcel, and to identify every tree that's 15 inches or greater would be a more than significant undertaking and wouldn't be appropriate for a project of this nature.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to hear it from you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I will make a motion that we will waive under site plan regulations 4.12.C.19, Roman numeral 8, requiring indication of trees greater than 15-inch diameter and species on the existing site, on the existing conditions plan. And we will waive that, and the reasoning is that waiver may be granted because there's no substantial detriment to the public good.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second from Jeff. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes in the affirmative. The waiver has been granted. All right, we have I'm looking for a motion on what we would like to do with this application.
Mr. Chair, may I offer something for the board's consideration?
Sure.
So I know that we're dealing with private utilities, private roads, private drainage, because it's all on our site. And typically, if this was in the public domain, we would be required to bond this. I would like the board to consider the fact that we are willing to bond this currently, even though they're all private improvements, to provide a town a bond completely to cover every comment in this reviewer's package that we received. So any conditioned approval we would be willing to bond all of those improvements until the time came that John is 100% satisfied with everything that we would be submitting.
I am not sure that's. What's the board's thought on that?
Yeah, I think we'll get off all of our regulations, keep us out of trouble.
And then is the applicant asking for approval as opposed to a continuance? By offering that?
I think what I was hearing through that is we're looking for an approval instead of a continuance, and we would be willing to apply some sort of bond to that.
Which is kind of like.
So without having a legal agreement in my hand, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't
that
say yes or
seems-
no.
Well, I mean, anyway, that's, I want to say that's outside of
Yep.
our purview to begin with. That really starts more with
Yep.
them, unfortunately. So, board, looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we continue this application for a formal review of a site plan for infrastructure associated with the Village on Technology Hill, PUD, including roadways, water, sewer, electric, and gas utility services. This is Zone Industrial 1, Industrial 2, and the Village on Technology Hill, PUD. Londonderry Holdings LLC is the owner and the applicant. tax map 28, lots 31-36, 29-2, and tax map 17, lots 2, 5-3, 5-4, and 5-5.
A motion, do I have a second?
The date, please.
And what's a good available date?
Your next meetings are August 7, August 14. I assume you don't want me going into
No,
September?
no. It obvious is July too soon. If it's at 15 days away, so probably
Yeah,
8,
that
10
would
business
be-
days. We get the holiday.
I'll be honest with you, but I'll tell you that agenda's heavy already.
Okay,
Up to
understood.
board,
So
We go for,
let's go for the first
August
weekend of
7th.
Yeah, August the
7th.
yeah. Let me just double check. August the 7th.
First,
What-
may want to ask the applicant if thinks he's going to make
You
any
guys think you
headway in
can-
that timeframe.
Dot your i's, cross your t's by the 7th.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we have a motion to continue this hearing to August 7th, excuse me. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second for Mann. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes in the affirmative. The motion has, or the site plan has been continued until August the 7th, right here in this room at 7 PM.
This is your only notice. right?
This is your only notice. All right,
You got that down well.
let's see here real quick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask a question of staff?
Sure.
So also scheduled for that night, Kelly, is the residential retail and childcare. Will we have comments back so that we can address those for that evening as well? Do you know?
Your residential and your retail are on
Yeah.
the 7th?
Yeah. Aren't those scheduled at that time?
Do I have formal applications for those?
We're waiting for our comments.
You should have comments if I have the formal apps.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
You're
We
welcome.
appreciate your time.
Can you check the box, Nick, formal? Not design review?
Box check.
Yeah, please.
All right, so, other business. I see a whole bunch of nothing. Anybody have anything?
You can point.
I
And,
thought I saw
Planning.
the applicants for.
Southern New Hampshire Planning.
thank you,
Yeah,
yes.
they're listed
I-
in,
I
with
would
the
like to
material.
bring that to, it's technically not in the agenda, so Kelly, if we could take that and put it on the agenda for the meeting of the 10th?
The appointments, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
That's fine.
If we could put that on the agenda for July 10th, so it's on there and it's on the public agenda, and I'd be okay with doing them first. I know they
yeah, it
spent a
should
lot of
be,
time
'cause
waiting the
Patrick
other
was
week.
here waiting last time, so
Yeah,
I think it's
thank you.
appropriate.
Yeah, I saw it on there earlier today.
It was on the
It's on the
initial.
agenda,
Yeah, I
right?
saw it
I wasn't,
Yeah,
But it wasn't on out here. I
It's
think
not on
Ray
this
said it
one.
wasn't on.
exactly, exactly.
And this is the one that was posted, so.
So I would like to wait until July 10th, just
Yeah, that's
so we
fine.
have it posted, Kelly, if we could make sure it's
just want to make sure I
posted.
wasn't crazy. I did
You may
see
be
it was.
crazy, but,
I thought I had it on there, so. But absolutely on the 10th.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make it a notice of public record that yet again, Planning Board has afforded the public a chance to speak in public comment, and they did so.
thank you. Yes, sir.
We're on other business.
Yep.
Just a really quick update. This past Monday, the advisory capital improvement program committee held its first meeting. The purpose was was an organizational meeting to elect a chair and vice chair and review the role of the committee. The capital improvement program is an advisory planning document that outlines proposed capital projects and major purchases over a 6-year period. The CIP helps ensure that these investments align with community needs, fiscal capabilities, and long-term planning goals. The committee anticipates capital projects from both school and the town will be presented. Our initial review meeting will occur on Monday evening, July 29th at 7 p.m. public is welcome to attend and will have the opportunity to provide feedback after each group presents their capital improvement plans. Proposals.
Thank you, Jeff.
So just wanted to give a quick update
Thank you.
on what the CIP committee is doing.
And then I can't remember, what was our date that we decided on for our first meeting, Jeff?
It was July 29th at 7 p.m.
Thank you very much, sir. Anything else from the board?
Nope, I'll make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Before we have the motion, I'd like to ask, Kelly, you talked a little bit tonight, obviously, we've just had a plan come about us that got continued. You talked about the need to change a regulation or look into our regulations. If I was understanding correctly, we are following our regulations. The third-party review company is responding within what is required of them, correct?
Correct.
If I understood tonight correctly, there is not enough time between when they are required to respond by to when we have a meeting. Am I wrong on that?
So it's really, everything is happening in accordance with the timeframes that we have in our regulations and in accordance with the statutory legal requirements.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering is
With respect to the
our
staff
time frame?
recommendation, with respect to the staff recommendation, there's very minimal time for us to then produce a recommendation
Correct.
so that the board has staff's input.
And I guess that's what I'm trying to ask you is, where is that regulatory change that
So-
gives you an appropriate amount of time?
In my view, what we're talking about is, do we want to continue doing a design review process and a formal review process? Because remember, design review remains with staff, formal goes straight to the board? Or do we want to strictly do formal reviews, everything comes right to the board, and, you know, you're seeing things off the bat from scratch?
I don't think anybody wants that. I'm just wondering if, do we have to change our schedule of how you guys get things so you have more time to review something
I have.
before that meeting
Yeah,
comes?
I have looked at potentially, bumping up submission deadlines, but.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, does moving a deadline by 2
I'm not
weeks?
100% certain that
That it'll solve
solution,
it,
but that's
yeah.
something that I've looked at.
Was part of the issue tonight that this is a special meeting and therefore you would normally have more time?
No, we had the same amount of time.
It's still the same amount of time
Yeah.
based off of the formal
I
meeting.
think it's just moving up what our, deadlines are.
So were those submittal dates that he said he submitted them, were they accurate?
They probably
instance,
were, but
which
to
one?
her, what Kelly had brought up
Gave us
was,
3 different dates.
Yeah,
I
so-
didn't write them all
So
down.
I just want to be
Yeah.
clear.
what Kelly brought up was there was nothing to review because they had no formal approval of their
So
PUD.
I'm
I
hesitant to
understand
discuss
that,
this
yeah.
without the applicant present.
Understood.
But to answer your question about when they dropped things off, submitted things to town, yes, they submitted items to the town.
But you couldn't really do anything until you got the PUD.
Correct.
Exactly.
That is why I
Right.
raised that point.
Exactly.
So
And
this
I-
is special. A normal site plan, you would have had when they submitted it, you'd have 35, is it
Correct.
35 days?
Well, the design review stage is 30-day review. From submission deadline to public hearing, it varies depending on the month, but it's around 20 days.
But a typical, you have your zoning, your site plan regulations, your subdivision regulations. These were put on the back burner because they were creating their own PUD regulations.
Yep.
So you want us to spend your money to look at what?
Correct.
What are we gonna comment it to?
No, I
That
understand that.
communication was had with the applicant.
Yeah, I
that
understand that.
We're gonna hold off on this because it's likely gonna change.
Yeah.
And we said it's gonna cost money for us to review this,
Yep,
so.
I understand that. So, that was just my 2 cents, is maybe we need to look at how our schedule's laid out. And adjust it to give you guys the time that you need to be able to look at something instead of doing it in 48 hours. You said you got it on the 24th, today's the 26th. What do we have to do to our regulations to make it that gives you 2 weeks to review something?
But
You know?
having been on the other side of the fence a long time ago, again, there you push, because the client wants it. So you know what? Just give it to the town. They're gonna tell us what's wrong with it, and then they blame us, you know? So again, there's no QA, QC, there's nothing of that.
So how much engineering do we actually do?
So, and to that point.
Too much.
And to that point, when I was on the other side, if I could get a town to pay for my engineering, I did.
Yeah.
If I thought I could get away with it, that's what I did.
I
Because it
just-
was a lot
just-
cheaper.
I just want to add one more point, just specifically about the PUD. Staff was very clear. Me personally, I was very clear about the time frame that was being presented.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the developer and their amount they've invested in the project, absolutely. But this time frame it's extreme, and that's been communicated this entire time. So.
Yeah.
We're reviewing things in the appropriate timeframes.
Yep.
But
No, I understand that, and, you know, it's not, I don't by any means think I'm, you know, looking here to point blame or any of that. I'm just, you know, asking, what do we do to change it a little bit so you guys have more time that you can do something. I certainly don't have the answer to
I
that.
think we need resolution. and
Yeah,
It's like
you know,
maybe
'cause
do
it's
some
not-
incremental changes and see what the effect
You know,
is.
at the end of the day, it's not like this is the only meeting that, I mean, it's pretty consistent that you are always waiting for comments back. So what I'm asking is how do we, what is the solution to that? So it's no longer, well, I'm still waiting for comments. Do we need to add 2 weeks to this timeline, or, you know what I mean?
I
don't
really
know.
think it's just bumping the submission deadline up about a week.
Yeah.
I can't do that till 2025 at this point, but because people
Understood.
plan their entire
They
calendar year.
plan the whole year
but
based off of what we
I'm
posted. Yeah.
Pretty certain that's at least a little bit of a solution to the,
Yeah.
to the,
You know, so
Issue.
obviously,
Yeah, so it's clear,
oh, yeah,
hold on,
Oh, yeah.
we've been around,
yeah,
so that's a great suggestion. But for sure, they got staffing problems. They need
Yeah.
they need more people. They can't say that, but they need people.
Yep.
And they don't have people. And who suffers? The applicant and the taxpayers.
Yep.
So under the guise of saving money by not hiring additional staff, if they could find staff, it's, in the end, it's costing money because, to the applicant's point, every day you wait is a day that you're not collecting taxes.
revenue that you're not getting, yeah.
So, I can say it, they can't.
Yep.
It's clear to me, and to anybody who's been anywhere, that they need more staff.
Yep, absolutely.
Just one other thing that I'd like to add though too, so even if you give them the comments a week in advance, they're gonna work diligently so that the night of the meeting, they come in here and say, this comment, we addressed it, this comment, you're gonna look to me, say, are you all set, John? No clue.
No, and that's what I'm
So it
getting
doesn't-
at, is if
So
we,
how do we
gain a
clear
whole heck of a
that?
lot.
that's what I'm getting at, is if we move
Yeah.
this timeline to, you know, if we change the timeline by 2 weeks, they've got a week to answer you and get it back to you, and.
So if you
But it's-
changed
but
your
it's-
final exam date back in college by 2 weeks, do you study 2 weeks ahead of time, or do you study the night before the
Yeah.
exam?
Well,
Good
see, I
point.
didn't go to college, so.
I mean, I think this is the way the world works
But
in
John,
some
how
cases.
do we fix that? How do we fix that part?
No, we
Kelly
said
had a
it the
great
night
suggestion,
before.
move it up a week. But how do we get the applicant to answer the questions
well,
X number of days before the actual
now we're
meeting?
talking
That's-
about, what we've also consistently talked about is quality of submissions.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
part of that.
But, you
Part
know,
of the solution is not just internally within town hall, it's external in what we're receiving.
yeah,
And in my opinion, Tony, we stay upstairs in the war room and we hash this stuff out. Because again, there are a point where, again, and they always say that, Stantec, and I always ask Kelly, they're not Stantec's, they're the town's comments, please. But then they know they piss me off, so anyways. So we stay upstairs in the design review and we go through this stuff. We go through this iteration. Okay? And when you're putting calculations that don't even apply to the particular job site,
Yeah.
I'd be humiliated. I would never put my PE stamp to something like that.
I understand, but but what I'm saying is running a business, I would not let an applicant come before, let's pretend people are making money, until 48 hours, 72 hours, a week before, whatever. It has to be all addressed before you come, before you come in and present.
So we have to allow them to go to
Yeah,
the public
because-
hearing if they want to submit.
Correct.
Um,
Because they
Statutory
submitted for
process.
formal statute,
Yeah,
by
I
yeah,
statute,
can't
they
tell
have to.
somebody-
statute provides for,
You can't
Two.
submit to the planning board.
Got it, I remember that now, thank you. I remember that now, yeah.
So, in a perfect world, we hopefully will bump a submission date up, you know, a week or whatever the appropriate time is. They'll have gone through the DRC process 1 or 2 times and they're ready. And then they still get their comments in advance so that they're at least they are seeing them a week or 2 in advance. And then they can have a discussion with the board and not have to say, we got these at noon.
Correct.
And then everything's great.
Got
But
it.
that's the perfect.
That's what I'm
world.
looking for, is how do we get to the perfect?
And we
world?
can do that,
That's-
you can do that in 2025, because we have to wait
Yep.
until the year's over.
Our submission deadlines are published through the end of the year.
Yep.
I don't have an issue.
So I
looking
think,
at
I mean,
bumping
for
it up.
starters, I think come 2025, a good step in the right direction to give staff more time, everybody more time, is to change the submission dates a little bit.
And that's something I can do internally that doesn't impact a regulation. It's just a matter of changing those deadlines.
yeah, and I think this plan, you know, the PUD is more of an exception.
Yeah,
So,
oh, yeah.
Because I think
absolutely.
they really want to move a lot faster than
Yeah.
they probably can, and certainly we probably can because of our regs. So, I mean, this is not going to be with every single plan, so
Yeah.
hopefully.
So,
So, of course, the developer always wants it yesterday, which is understandable, but, I mean, we have our role to play also.
Art, I don't know if you remember when we used to identify repeat comments with an asterisk.
Mhm. I remember
And some of the former members of the planning board, God bless their soul, used to bring that up. And he would say, why are we even listening to this?
Yeah, you must remember the old Jim and Agnes days when he was chair, it's got more than 8 comments, it's continued.
That's right.
That was it.
God bless his soul.
with that, I think we've had a little bit of a productive conversation. I think we've had something that maybe Kelly's identified that we can work on for the 2025 calendar year that might help the process a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's,
I don't think it's the end all be all, but I think it's a step in the right
I
direction.
think you want to do a little bit at a time to see how it works.
Make a motion,
Works,
Lance.
hurrah, if it doesn't, well,
Make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chair, to
Yes,
adjourn.
sir. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Sorry to cut you off, Art. All in favor, please
I
say
was
aye.
gonna make the motion.